So now you can connect to Node or to MySQL from Node. Before we start diving a bit more into Node, we're going to talk about security when it comes to databases. So when you have a web app or something running, you're going to get some credentials for databases. Like now you're using the root user with just a standard password because it's your own local machine, and it doesn't really matter with security when it's just a local install. But when you're going to run on some production infrastructure or something like that, you get a username and password, and then that user only has access to the stuff it's supposed to have access to. So if there is 10 different databases in that server, and you're only supposed to read data from one, you're only going to get, hopefully only going to get permissions to read from that database. And it's a way of ensuring that having security at multiple levels is that if your user, for example, only reads data and never inserts or updates data or deletes data, there's no reason to give you permissions to delete stuff or insert stuff or update stuff. For that matter, you can only select, for example. So you can do that with in MySQL with something called grants, where you grant permission for a user to do something. So the simplest example would be, let's try and create a user on my database here. I think it's select star from user, isn't it? Oh yeah, that's
big table.
Yeah, now I can't. Okay, so there's one called, there's a lot of stuff in there. User, there it is. Select user. So I only have 3 users in my system. I guess there's also something called host, right? Yeah. So if I want to add another user and give that user permissions to do something, I have to cheat a little bit and copy it in because I almost never use this. So we're going to create the hack your future user identified by some password. Let's just take one. HYF as well. So now if I run this, we created a user, but that user does not do anything. So you see we have a user now called HYF that can connect from localhost. So it can only connect from the local machine. You could also add, he can connect from localhost and someone else and something else, another IP address. Most likely it's going to be localhost. But yeah. Then this user cannot do anything right now. They can log in, but they can't really read any data because we didn't give them permissions for anything. So let's say we want to grant this user all the permissions to the HYF1 database. So all the tables in that database. Then we can do this. This basically means all privileges means select, insert, update, and delete. That's it. So we can write this. We could also write so then they would get the same permissions. But let's say we only want select permissions because this user is only supposed to read data. Okay? And then we have to run this, which basically flushes the privilege down to the database. That's stuff. But, let's try and see if we can connect to this data to the user. Did I do it wrong? It's because I'm connecting from a different.
Oh yeah.
Okay. That's perfect. It's specific stuff to my shit because I'm running Docker. Of course, I'm not. So I'll just start that again. So in this case, the percentage sign means from any host. So I can connect to this database server as the user HYF from any host. There we go. And then I need to grant privileges. We only wanted to give them select privileges. There we go. So now we actually, you see, we have the HYF user with any host and the HYF user with localhost only. Let's see if this works. There we go. So I only have, so I say use HYF1. Let's say show tables, select star from status. Let's see that. Okay, well, let's say I want to be an idiot and try and delete something. Delete from status. So I can't do that because I don't have permissions to do that. So if you're having a web app, it's about giving the user as few permissions as possible needed to do its job. Because in the case that, let's say, someone gets a hold of your MySQL username and password or hacks your app or something, then even if they hack your app, then they cannot fuck up the database. Yeah. And I guess you've heard all these data leaks lately from LinkedIn, from I think Dropbox as well, so all these companies. And a lot of the data dumps come from either people having them hosted somewhere that they shouldn't, or because the database is fully accessible to everyone. So they had a shitty app that was vulnerable, and then someone broke in and found out, oh, I can just extract all the data, and then they did that. So yeah, a lot of, even some of the biggest companies, it happens to them. LinkedIn, for example, it happens for and too, and yeah, it happens to. What?
Yeah,
Sony, yeah, exactly. They were hacking. I don't know if they used SQL injection or anything, but yeah, it's important to, if you have anything, and the more valuable the data you have, the more focus you should have on security. So if you're storing people's, let's say, wish list, whatever, maybe that's not so secret, but still, you should take care of their data. But compared to, let's say, if you're a bank and you're storing people's money, then you should probably spend some more money on security and testing than if you're making a to-do app or something like that. Yeah, let's talk about the next thing. Is a bit related to the first we just talked about. So SQL injection, I think is. Have you heard this term before? SQL injection?
Yeah, I've heard the name, but I don't know.
Okay. Let's try. Let's see what let's give me an editor that I actually. See if I can open this in. Safari, maybe? Yeah, there we go. So let's say in this query I'm running here, select star from user, I want to add a where condition. Where ID equals 1, let's say. Because I'm fetching the details for the user 1. Let's try and run this. Let me find this. What? Didn't I save it? I didn't save it. That's fine. Cool. Now we only get a recap something. So let's say that this number 1 actually comes from a user supplied function. So it could be a browser or something. Let's say the user enters their email address or whatever. Let's go with email address instead because that's a bit more realistic. Where email equals
something like heuristic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it could be from GET requests, or it could be from them searching for an email or something like that, right? So let's say that this thing actually comes from a user supplied function. And we don't have any front end right now. User email. So let's say that this user email, instead of just me putting it here, it comes from something that the user requests or something like that. So I'm running it now and it works just fine. But the user can put in anything in this email field. You might write email, but they can put in whatever they want. They can put in a birthday, a phone number, whatever they want. They can do anything. So the key, what do you call it? learning point for this is don't trust the data that the user sends to you. So just because it's supposed to say an email doesn't mean it has to be an email. So the best example is something called SQL injection, which still sadly is present in a lot of places. So if I did this, if I can craft it correctly, let's see, maybe I need to look at the example. Yeah. So if I did this and then I said delete from user, and then I did this, then this query would look very different when I run it. So this would actually become, let's just try and put it here, select star from user where email equal this, and then it would become this. So it would actually first select the user where this is happening, but then afterwards it would delete all the entries from the user table, because the semicolon means this is one query and the next one starts, and this one is is another query. So I can, instead of deleting, let's just say I wanted to find a user that I can delete, but I'm not going to be sad I've deleted. User. I need values. There we go. Now I have a user with the ID 14 called Hackerman that I want to delete. Let's see if I can actually do that. Let's see what happens when I run this. Undefined. Maybe I'm an idiot. Let me just. Let's see. Yeah. I don't know why it fails actually. But this is the
maybe a space after the last semicolon. I'm not sure if it picks up that it's close.
What, where?
The last user email.
Here or?
Yeah, I was thinking maybe
One single quote, I think, extra. No?
No, I don't think so, because it's going to be, so if we do this, you see this is the actual SQL.
Yeah.
Select from. We can try and run this in the console actually, just to make sure. So if we run it here, maybe there's something with Node.js. Maybe it actually tries to stop it. I don't know. So now my user is gone. So the SQL that's being run on the database, it's not the stuff you think it is, because you accept what the user gives you as an email address, but it isn't necessarily an email address. And that's how a lot of systems get broken into. There was the best example I remember is there was a Danish. You all know about something called Bitcoin, all that stuff. So there was a Danish company. I think they were called eKrone or something weird. It was like a company back in 2004 or 5 or something, and they did virtual money, Danish krona, or they called it something else, but it was basically virtual money. And they were running on Microsoft SQL database. And they launched this, and they said it was the most secure currency in the world, blah blah blah, everything is perfect, and marketing. And then someone found out that their SQL server was vulnerable to SQL injection. So if you form a link, it was something like, blah blah.dk/query equals something, and then they wrote a query that said, well, if someone runs this, if someone actually just visits this website, their database will disappear. And he didn't do it, but then he posted the link on a forum and said, this link is dangerous. If you visit this link, you will delete the entire currency database for this currency, for this startup company. And one unlucky person clicked it because he said, no, that can't be true. That's bullshit. And he clicked it, and then their systems went offline because the database was shut down and deleted or something. And the people who got arrested and fined for it wasn't the guy who wrote the query, but it was the guy who clicked it, because he actually, deleted it. I think the company should be more ashamed of having shitty security than, because it might as well just be Google dropping by and clicking the link, from a call or whatever. But so it even happens and it's a lot better today because most of the frameworks have built-in tools to avoid this SQL injection stuff. But there are still a lot of websites today where this is the case. You can find, as late as I think 4 or 5 years ago, I found it on a Danish bank, not Danske Bank, but a small Danish bank's website from where I come from. And it happens on a lot of other different websites as well, because it's very intuitive when you have SQL and say, oh, I want to add something from the user, I will just put two strings together.
In the SQL, they are not handling this issue?
No, because what you're doing here is I'm basically just adding to a string, and then I'm running it in SQL. What Node, the MySQL module has, and what all the other MySQL modules for PHP and Python and all the other languages you can find, is something called prepared statements, where you can avoid this. So that's where you prepare.
MySQL 2 is using it.
Yeah, exactly, and I think it's used for Microsoft SQL and Postgres and what stuff as well. Is that you write the query with something called placeholders, and then you provide the parameters, and then they make sure that no one can use SQL injection. So
question mark sign, I think, is used.
Yeah, exactly.
By default in MySQL.
Exactly, yeah. So let's go to the Node documentation. I can show you. So they have prepared. Yeah. There we go. So you can see it here, for example. So let's try and do this. In our code here. We can just remove that stuff again. Yeah, let's just put this stuff back where it came from. Yeah, perfect. So then let's try this. We want to say update user set phone number again to something, where ID equals something. Now we want to update the, say this comes from the user as well. So then we can actually use the placeholders as you said. Let's say phone. So now this we have placeholders in the form of the question marks, and we provide the parameters to it. So it doesn't matter how many tricks I try to pull here, and I say, table, whatever. It's not going to work because this MySQL package for Node is going to make sure that it's executed correctly and it's escaped correctly, and nothing's going to happen to let's see if we can find. So now So if we do let's try that just to see what happens. So now her phone number is something weird, something we maybe should fix, but it didn't fuck up the database.
It takes in a string, I think.
Yeah, exactly. It treats it as a string. No matter what you write, and you can be as crazy as you want, you're not going to get through this prepare statement stuff. I think technically in the Node.js package it's not a prepare statement, it uses something to emulate it, but yeah.
The database where is not because like we've changed and it has the string, but the original database is not changed.
What do you mean?
The number which has been in the database, is it replaced with the string?
Yeah. So now you see that now that I put in
1 to 3 and
We can't recover it.
no, the old one, no. But the thing is, we saved exactly what we wanted to save the actual string. So with the phone number, we might want to clean up 0 to 9 and that is allowed for phone numbers and plus 45 and all that stuff.
But we don't use that queue.
Yeah.
It means that we cannot have a finance injection. And the data will be stored not in a string form. And then
it will execute it as it is, as SQL. Yeah, as SQL. Basically, it's some sort of code injection, SQL injection. That means that if someone finds a way to do that to your database, then you should expect them to be able to extract all data from your database, and or delete all the data if your user has access to that. And yeah, they can pull out hashed passwords or email addresses for spamming, or phone numbers for phone spam, or just play around with your stuff and delete all your data. It has happened to companies where 1, 2, 3-year-old companies, they didn't have a proper backup routine, and someone deleted all the database and they had to go bankrupt. So it happens.
It's very real.
Yeah. Have a public, like WordPress or web server or something running. If you look at the log files for that, you can see people trying it all the time because they have bots to try it on every website in a row every 10 seconds or something. And people just crawl back and forth to find databases they can hack, they can do all stuff with. Yeah, discovered the raw as well. So if you're doing something in Node where you're not taking user input, so let's say you're not taking user input. Let's say you just want to find all users. Select star from user. Then there's no, you're not using parameters from user, so there's no reason to use. You can just do raw queries. But as soon as you have user input, it comes from other places in your system, such as a config file or another database table or something. Make sure you use this prepare statement stuff, the placeholders. It's better to do it one time too many than one time too few. And like parameter validation would be stuff. Where to go? Where the manual go? Node.js. So the validation would be like, okay, we're trying to save a phone number, so you would probably check that the phone number is actually a phone number before you try to store it, and that the email address is actually an email address before you try to store it. It's something you can do with filters in Node, or in validators in Node, probably also in other languages. So just make sure that there's no. So for example, if I insert something here, I'm inserting directly into the database, right? I can just put in blah 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 blah, and it's gonna insert. In your application, you have to validate the stuff you get in from the user is actually an email address, is actually a phone number, to make sure that you're not storing stuff in your database that's not an email address or a phone number, or name, whatever it is. Numbers as well. If someone has to write in a birth year, then they're writing in 2005 or whatever, then you want to validate that the year is actually a year and not, they could write in year 0, but I'm guessing they're not going to be born in year 0, because then that would be pretty amazing if they were still alive at least. Start procedures. Enumeration. What's that cover?
I guess it's the data type, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I'm just wondering if it's something with Node stuff, because I'm not really too familiar with Node. Okay. Yeah, that's not really. Okay, yeah, so that makes sense. This is a good example actually. So often you will have objects that represent the stuff in Node. So person or a car or a task, whatever it is. So this is actually a good example from let's say we have a user object and we want to update a user with a new phone number. Let's say 1, 2, 3, plus 45, something, whatever that is. Then we say update user set. Yeah. Phone equal. You can probably do something like this, and then I'm guessing. Let's try it, see if it works. And, if it doesn't, then we'll have to figure out why it doesn't work. Oh. Nope, that doesn't work.
They only write set, and then it does the rest.
Yeah, so maybe it's not for update. Maybe it's just for, let's say, insert user set. So like this. Yeah, I guess. Okay, then id is not going to be provided. Okay, we have a new user with name. And I guess that's the only thing we need, right? Email.
I think email, yeah.
Let's see if this works. No? User. I wrote it with capital letters. There we go. Yeah, no, he's there. You can give in objects instead of arrays of things. Yeah, there's also one. I don't think we've covered this actually in the last class, which is because enumerations is also something you can use in. I guess we're going to have that down here. Okay, yeah. Let's go a bit and then do some tasks. So let's make some example tasks here. Let's say number 1 is what should we do? Select is it called prepare statement? Should just make sure. Yeah, escape and brew. Yeah. So this is the. Try that, and then we'll come around